in the lobby of where I work, there is a sign that says, "Quite, please." No, not what, I'm not saying it wrong, it's written exactly, "Quite, please." An obvious spelling mistake that has been pointed out to people, but no one wants to change it. So it's created a bit of an in-joke at work. When anyone makes a bit of a noise, someone will always shout out, "Quite, please," and generates a bit of a laugh all around. I give this as an example of something that is funny to those who are in the know. Were I to say it in any other circumstances, people would just look at me, scratch their heads and wonder what's happened to me. With this in mind, I got to thinking about some other comedic phrases that again you have to be a bit in the know to understand them. It was the comedian, the late Spike Milligan, who observed that if you say something often enough, in the end it will be funny. He put this to good use in the Goon Show radio series in the 1950s. Today, if I were to say to you, "He's fallen in the water," or "He's deaded me," again you'd be staring at me wondering what's going on. Those who know the Goon Show, of course, will give a good hearty chuckle, possibly adding a few others to it. It was the Goon Show type humour that inspired the team of writers and performers that went on to form Monty Python's Flying Circus. People would often go and see their live shows knowing the script from start to finish. There's even one story told where Michael Palin had diverted a bit from the script, which threw John Cleese off. He forgot where he was in the sketch, looked down at the audience and asked for a prompt. That again for me is a sort of humour that you're not necessarily going to a show to see something new. You're going to a show to see something familiar and to laugh along with them, even though when you know where the punchlines are and what's going to be funny. Anyone who has watched The Life of Brian may remember a short sequence where Brian's mother allows him to speak to the crowd, and she tells him, "Just a minute, or only 1 minute." The crowd, after his little speech and her closing the shutters, shouts back, "That was never a minute." Well, if you're not in the know, it's perhaps not as funny, because you have to think back to a sketch called The Argument Clinic, and again they're arguing about the length of time that can be purchased for having an argument. I'm not going to cover any other comedy shows, just want to give a few examples of the in-joke. But I'm sure you can also think of examples where certain phrases in a show will become part of the language, usually within a small group of people, sometimes a bit larger. But sometimes when you listen to people using these expressions, you can also see how it's age related. Well before my time, well maybe about 10 years, radio show, and one of the phrases, instead of saying what can I do for you, it was what can I do you for? Well, I grew up hearing people say that little phrase. It joined in a bit with my generation, but has totally disappeared. Makes me wonder, as we go forward, and only time will tell on this, how many other phrases will join the language and disappear. But it also relates to where you grew up and which circle of people you grew up with. I've met people who listened to various comedy shows in Britain that I wasn't familiar with, hearing them roar with laughter when certain phrases were said, and myself not having a clue what was going on. Well, as Python might say, now for something completely different, or this is very silly, let's stop the sketch here.